All right, folks, we are back for more Grand Blue Fantasy vs. Rising, another discussion video here, and by the title, you know what we're talking about already. This is a bit of a, I don't know if it's like a touchy subject or a controversial subject or what, but I think it's something that I've mentioned kind of peppered throughout some videos here and there, but I kind of want to just sit down and really get a full video discussing this. Honestly, kind of working through my thoughts myself here too. I have an opinion on this for sure. But what we're going to be talking about today, as you can tell, is the idea of, do healthy top tiers exist? Is there such a thing as a character that can be the best character in the game, or like pretty close to, like, you know, in the discussion for like best character in the game, and still be like totally fine, and it's okay if they remain at that same power level, right? I think a lot of people in general, they're always on the terrain of, like, you know, we have to nerf all these characters. We have to make sure that, like, all these characters are nerfed. There's no characters that, like, stand out, stuff like that, or like they just want whatever character. I think more realistically what it is they want whatever character is currently good is the one that everyone hates, right? They don't even really care about who was good before or who's going to be good after. It's just kind of like the character that is currently beating my ass needs to get removed from the game, right? But I don't know that is so much the case, right? When I say healthy top tier, what I mean is, even though the character is close to best in the game, maybe in discussion for best in the game, they still... This is going to be a video about interactability, I suppose. This is the kind of thing that people talk about in card games a lot more often, I feel like, but it comes up in fighting game discussions a little bit too. But it's like, I think a healthy top tier is one who is probably good at every stage of the game, but is interactably good at every stage of the game there, right? And if that sounds like a certain archetype of character to you, we'll get to that as we go on, right? Now, of course, this is what this video really is. What this video really is, it's a closeted, it's a secret, hidden way for me to talk about Belial, because listen, I know. I mean, I didn't play vanilla Grand Blue, so I don't feel it quite as much as some of y'all. I get it. I understand. This guy has been top 1 or close to top 1 or in the discussion since he released. He's like never nerfed in any kind of significant way. He's always in discussion for best character in the game, or at least up there. I think for all of Rising's career, he has been at the very least. If you're smoking like that good dick, he's been like top 5 since the game released, and has never been any lower than that, right? But hear me out. I think like by and large, I'm kind of okay with Belial being as strong as he is. And honestly, so the more characters that kind of like come in and out of top tier with him, because like he's kind of been the one stable factor in top tier, right? Every time like other characters leave top tier and new ones join top tier, I kind of feel like it just reinforces to me this idea of like, he's not that bad. Because yes, are there like some touches that you could put on Belial that make him a little bit more reasonable? Yeah. I really think, like, you know, for example, he probably shouldn't have like the only plus on block low 2M. It's also pretty big and it comes into itself and it does crazy shit on counter hit and all that. I get that. But like overall, for him to just be at this power level, dude, I'm kind of okay with it. Like, I actually think it's totally fine. Like, I think Belial is not going to get nerfed that hard in like the season 2 patch, and I'm not sure that I mind too much. Because here's the thing, so that's the sort of statement, and I want to give you why I believe that, right, in a couple of different ways. One, I want to talk about alternatives, I suppose. If Belial is not going to be top tier, right, someone has to be. By the way, the idea that Belial is top 1 is like debatable in and of itself right now, right? But like, as a character who is like always at least in that discussion, right? Belial could be top 1 in this patch, 2, 3, 4. I think there's about like 7 characters in this patch that are like top tier to me, and like, if you put any of them as top 1, I don't think you're like smoking crack, right? But yeah, just for the sake of argument, let's say the Belial is top 1, right? It's kind of okay, because the alternatives, for example, are, yeah, so when Nier was top 1, right? This character was, like, people will be like, oh, Belial's interactable? Really funny, man, yeah. I love all the interaction I have when he's fucking plus on block 2-ing me and shimming my ass and killing me from mid-screen and all that. I get it. But hold on a second. Fighting games, by their very nature, a character that's winning is going to take away our options, right? But like, Belial is interactable when we talk about shit like, yeah, and they removed the guard crush setup, which is one of the least interactable things about him, right? But like, Belial is interactable when you compare him to like this bitch, right? Which I understand. Just because Nier was a worse mistake doesn't mean Belial isn't a mistake. But when I say Nier was uninteractable, what I mean? She's got some of the best neutral in the game, great. But the thing is, once she hit you once back in the day, What it was looping 50-50 until you died. And the 50-50 was like no risk to her whatsoever, right? And it led to a shit ton of damage, and it worked anywhere in the screen, and she had the best pressure in the game, and all your defensive options were the riskiest against her, like throw teching or brave countering or anything. She just shut down almost any kind of counterplay, right? I want to start. I'm gonna kind of take us down the ladder here, and hopefully, like, you know, I can yes ladder you towards agreeing with me, right? So I think it's not that hard of a stretch. It's not that hard of a stretch to say that, like, yeah, Nier is a worse top tier than Belial, right? Nier, well, yeah, and we'll talk about, yeah, I want to make a whole video on pre-patch Nier, Zach, because yes, yeah, she's not even, like, we never saw, like, the full potential of Nier, anyway. But yeah, so I think it's an easy place to start to say that Nier is a more toxic top tier than Belial. Yes? Okay, good. Now, let me talk about something else with this Belial fella, right? So, here's the interesting thing about Belial, right? Belial is good because he does everything well, right? Belial has, like, he's got great buttons to mash on a bar. He's got, like, one of the best crouching lights in the entire game. He's got good buttons in general. His far range is, like, the best whiff punish or slash shimmy tool in the entire game. His 2M is maybe the best normal in the entire game. He's got maybe the best fireball in the entire game, right? He's got, like, all of that combined from having some of the scariest, like, pressure overall in the entire game. And in a game where, like, true 50-50s generally are not that common, the guy with, like, the scariest mental stacks is gonna have some of the scariest pressure, right? All of that is true. However, all of these things, none of these things are, you know, fuck you buttons necessarily, except maybe this one, right? Again, maybe this one, maybe this one. I'll give you, like, this is maybe this may be a little much. Let's say you can give him a plus on block 2M that's not a low. You can give him a low 2M that's not plus on block. Like this move's a little overloaded, I think. Okay. But in general, first off, Belial does not have outside of like, you know, he can run in 6XL. He's got a great 6XL. He's got, like, this thing now, I guess. He's got 5U kind of, but Belial does not have, like, a super reliable way to get in on you compared to a lot of the more, like, belligerent rushdown characters in the cast, right? This video, people are gonna be so mad at me for this. Belial's approach is relatively honest, and that's usually, like, he's got great jump in buttons. Again, he's good. His 6XL is one of the best in the game. Sure, yeah, but, like, again, 6XL is not a gap closer from, like, here, right? Again, that's more of, like, at this point, like, 6XL, you know, he's got good tools, but he's not like empty-handing it on your ass. You know, he's not like there are worse things for sure. He's not like Grimnir seal dashing around and shit. He's got good jumping buttons. He's got good neutral buttons. He's got a great 6XL. But, like, you can keep this guy away from you, right? As a lot of the cast, like, the closest thing he has to, like, a free get in your face tool is this thing. But I mean, it's like one of the worst moves in his kit, probably, outside of, like, certain matchups, right? But again, I'm not trying to say Belial's not good. Even this is, like, a weakness insofar as Belial has a weakness, right? And then the neutral, the stuff in the corner is RPS. It's Belial favored RPS. It's difficult Belial favored RPS to get out of, right? But, like, at the very least, again, you can actually guess what he's gonna do and stop that, right? There's counterplay for everything, right? It's just that fighting games are essentially, if you want to be very reductive about them, fighting games are essentially really big, complicated risk-reward equations, right? If he can be good with a strong neutral skip, what does that say about characters that need them? I get it. Listen, I'm not trying to say Belial is not good, right? But I'm saying, so the reason that Belial is so strong is not because he's, like, uninteractable and there's no counterplay to anything. It's that fighting games, if you want to boil them down, are just one big risk-reward equation, right? Where in different circumstances, they have, like, all these different percent chances of something happening, and then those things have different rewards or risks for them. And because you are not always going to be the guy running offense in the corner, you're not always going to be in your perfect spot on the screen, you're not always going to be in the guy who's running defense in the corner, you're not always going to be on 3 brave points or 2 brave points or 1 brave points or full meter or 0 meter. There are thousands, millions, I don't know, of different possible scenario combinations, if you count all the characters too, I guess, yeah. If you expand it out, branch it out to 34 more branches and all this, there are so many different possible situations you can be in a fighting game. The reason Belial is in discussion for best character in the game is not because he's so overwhelmingly powerful at one aspect of the game, but because there really is no place where he's not at least good, right? He's got good defense, he's got good neutral, he's got good offense, or great in some cases, right? Good, great neutral, great offense, right? Good defense, like great damage, but he's not a super excellent character in any one of those facets, really. And what that ends up being is a character that's super consistent, right? Belial, you are almost never going to lose because you are playing Belial. Belial has like no significant weakness for like a bad matchup to exploit, or for like a player to try and exploit in it. Like, you really do have to beat the player who's playing Belial. But can I give you guys a hot take? It's something I was listening to, right? If some of y'all saw that Road to Master that Diphon was doing, he was talking about like, it feels like I have to like win as Belial, right? It feels like I have to win as Belial. Like, it doesn't make, like, I was expecting to feel cheaper than this. And when I watched that video, I was like, bro, like, what the fuck are you talking about? But then I thought about it some more, and I just watched some more Belial gameplay, and I thought about his kit some more, and I compared him to other top tiers, and I'm like, yeah, you do have to beat the Belial player, but the Belial player kind of has to beat you as well, less so. But Belial just has a bunch of good tools that you need to use properly. He does not have... Let me give you an example of like something, you know, this is, people are gonna like this because I always downplay this character, everyone gets mad at me. Like, he does not have something like this, right? Belial has no move that looks like this, right? There is nothing here in Belial's kit that is anywhere close to something like this, right? He does not have something that just removes so many of your options and so much of interaction that it's just, well, guess I'll fucking die, right? He does not have anything like Vasaraga Soulforge. He does not have anything like a looping command grab. He does not have Grimnir's like seal pressure on the corner. He does not have a Blade Low 5 Lucilius. He does not have Nir's looping 50-50s off her any hits, right? All he does is he will not lose you the game. He will not lose you the game, right? And by the way, characters having these don't make them better than Belial. Vasaraga is not better than Belial, but it's true that Vasaraga's offense is significantly better than Belial's, right? Vasaraga's advantage state is way better than Belial's. The reason that Vasaraga is not as good as Belial is that across the other multitude of situations he can be in the game, Vas is more inconsistent than Belial, and he's got more weaknesses because his kit is more jagged. I've brought this example a lot before, right? He has a command grab to force interactions and mess with your mental stack, though? True. However, for example, his command grab is reactable. This one's not, right? This one isn't, and it also doesn't use a cooldown, and it also loops back into itself, right? Again, he has good tools everywhere, but nothing he has is like fully, all right, motherfucker, time to guess. All right, motherfucker, time to die. All right, So, like, for example, when Voss does this, right, you can't brave counter. You can't really do anything, right? So, jagged characters like this tend to be more toxic, even when they're worse than more well-rounded characters. You might have noticed a general trend in fighting games where it kind of seems like fighting game devs they're just always making the Shotos top tier, and like you're not really sure why, right? Like Belial is a really good character, Siegfried's a really good character, Ken is a really good character, Luke was a good character in season 1 and probably is now again, right? They're making it really strong. Akuma's pretty strong. Why is it always like weird all-rounder characters are the ones that end up being top tier for the most part, and you have like a couple of like weirdos that sneak in every patch, right? Like maybe they'll make like Zangief really good for one patch, something like that, or they'll make like, you know, etc., right? The reason for this is this exact sort of idea, right? Top tier Shotos become top tier through having that risk-reward equation be so balanced that they're never gonna like lose you the game. One of the most important things at the high levels of play is consistency. Grand Blue is a game at this point where any character can win. Any character can win. Any character can win a match. Anyone can win a set. Anyone can win a tournament. There's no character in Grand Blue that is too weak to like feasibly beat every other character in the game, at least on a good day in a bracket, right? The only real thing at this point in Grand Blue that's going to determine your tier placement is how consistently can you perform that. And outside of you know, your player being very good, what you can do there is just, if the character himself is not going to let you down and it's up to you, then we can just talk, okay, great, now it's up to me to be a good player. Belial does this. Vasaraga does not do this. Funny enough, there are cases where Vasaraga will carry you more than Belial, right? Again, there are parts of Boss's kit will carry you more than Belial ever would. Parts of that people it's like it's even an even weaker character. Parts of Oliva's kits, right, will carry you even more than Belial ever would. When I first started getting other characters to master as a Oliva main, I had to like learn how offense worked in Grand Blue because I just didn't need to learn it playing Oliva. Because Oliva just has a looping 50-50 in the mid screen, which now post patch does 6,000 damage, right? If you guess wrong. and it loops back into itself, right? Like, I didn't have to learn how Grand Blue offense works until I played Sora's, because he ran, like, more basic strike throw, because Ladiva was carrying me in that aspect of the game, right? So, Belial is going to give you the tools you need to succeed. He's not going to carry you in any aspect, and the reason I think that makes him healthy is because usually what I mean when I say getting carried in some aspect, if you don't have to understand how a system works to succeed in it, you are probably removing the ability for the opponent to interact with you, right? If there's like one thing there, that's a good like summary sentence of why I think Belial is not bad.
Come, dear, let's get to it.
And you'll notice, a good inclination of this, by the way, is you'll notice, have you ever talked to like A rank Belials and S rank Belials and like B rank Belials and shit? I've seen this a lot, and I do replay reviews and stuff. You ever notice they feel like they can't do anything? Right? Like, when I see, like, lower rank Belials, when I watch the replay reviews, I'm like, oh. Right? Like, oh, like, oh. Shit. Fuck. This character requires you to be good at the game. Because people who are newer to the game, what Belial does is he plays the system super well, but you have to understand what you're doing to work with it, right? Now, again, if you understand what you're doing, boy, does he do it well. But because he has to play within the intrinsic systems of the game are designed in such a way that there's always an RPS, there's always counterplay, there's always interaction, right? All Belial does is play that game well. He makes that RPS more favored for him, right? Belial is not going to carry you. You're not going to carry him either. You don't have to carry him either, right? But all he's going to do is he's the perfect canvas for you. If you're good at the game, just go, right? There is really nothing that he's going to do that's that crazy. So, for example, right, let's talk about, and this is sort of like mixing into what is a healthy top tier. I think we've already kind of established. I want to talk about unhealthy top tiers, because I feel like I talk about this more, and I get more feedback when I say things like this. Like, when I say, for example, that I don't want them to buff Ladiva, right? Not significantly. Why is that, right? There is a very clear example of, like, an unhealthy top tier to me are usually two archetypes that fighting game devs, if we say that fighting game devs in general try their best to keep like Shotos on the higher end of the video game, archetypes that fighting game devs usually will try to keep a little bit more constrained, right, is grapplers and zoners. And why is this, right? I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna pull this out real quick. Ignore the drippy gran. It was a thumbnail from earlier. I'm gonna do this again just for the sake of it. I apologize in advance. But why is it so small? So let's zoom in here, right? If this shit is just okay. Hold on, it's just tiny. Let's just make it bigger. There you go. All right, so I just need to. I've drawn this already. If you've watched these streams, you know what I'm about to do. I'm gonna do like a really bad attempt at this. But like, if this is like your fucking JoJo stat hexagon, right? If this is your JoJo stat wheel, right? And like, I don't know, man. Like this up here. Let me get a brush going if I can. Where are the goddamn brushes? Here it is. Right? If like this axis is like offense, and this one is defense, and this one is Oki, and this one is neutral, and this one is like damage, and this one is survivability, and this one is, you know, etc., etc. It's all the different facets you can like alter a fighting game character on. This one is like, you know, how good you do with like the system mechanics, like if you have a good throw bait or brave counter bait, etc., etc. Right? If Belial looks kind of like this, right? Belial is like, he's pretty good at like everything, right? Belial's pretty good at everything. He has no like big cave-in weakness, right? However, a character like Ladiva or Vasaraga looks more so something maybe like they have less over here for sure. They have less over here, but then they just do this or something. I've drawn the Giga Chad. If I give him like some eyes and a nose or something, I've drawn Jeff from Marvel Heroes, right? Like, these characters are not well-rounded characters, but they do one thing like better than everything else, and that's kind of their identity, right? Ladiva is not very good, but boy oh boy is in the corner when you're getting command grabbed over and over. Boy oh boy is this just like just the great equalizer, right? There's nothing that you can do about this, right? The amount of like really good players that I have just beaten using Ladiva just because, you know, I in my defense, I played neutral well, I got past them, but then I just got them here and they just like guessed wrong 3 times in a row, right? And they died. Right? Like, it like does not matter how good you are if I have you here. Right? It's simply like, and again, the character overall is still inconsistent. She's bad. How often she gets here is like pretty rare, right? Also, Mimith Web, thanks for the follow. But the point being that when she gets you here, it actually, your skill level suddenly does not matter, actually, like, at all. Right, like like little tricks you can know, sure, like some game knowledge can be helpful, but like suddenly it doesn't matter if you are amazing, best player in the world, or if you are like literally just picked up the game and you know what the mix is, right? You are the same person here. All you're fucking doing is guessing over and over and hoping for the best, right? And like try maybe like it's maybe you try to like brave counter baited. It's just a completely single player situation. It's fucking turn-based Granblue is what this is. Now, Ladiva is kept weak on purpose. Because if she is too strong,
cheer me on now.
There's only one way, basically, to make Ladiva too strong. Either you make her, there's two ways, sorry. There are two ways to make Ladiva too strong. Either you make her so like she's like Belial, where she's super well-rounded everywhere, but then you just don't remove the command grab, in which case, what the fuck are you doing? Like, imagine that this, like, that is the equivalent of saying, what if Belial had a meterless, looping 50-50 that he just didn't need to expend any resource on at all, and if he wanted to, it could do 6k, and it would loop back into itself, and all that shit, right? That sounds like a horrible idea, right? That's one way to make Ladiva top tier, is just buff, like, make all of her weaknesses gone, I guess. Like, she's got bad defense, she got bad neutral, she's slow, right? If you'd removed all those and just kept her command grab, then yeah, she'd be top 1, no doubt, right? The other way, and the way this more usually manifests in characters like this, is, she still has her weaknesses, right? She still has bad defense, she still has, she's still slow, she still has, like, bad neutral, she still has, like, very risky options to get in, stuff like this. But, like, what if this EX SPD was, like, the size of her light SPD, or bigger, the size, like, her pre-patch light SPD, and also it, like, didn't have a cooldown. And, like, maybe also this was, like, a cancel instead of a link, right? So instead of doing 5,600 damage, it did like 9,000 damage. Like, what if we just tuned up the strengths so goddamn much? And also, like, what if we gave her like her old strike routes back? Where like her strike damage was as high as it was pre-patch, right? And then you just end up in the case where like, yeah, the character has weaknesses, but like they don't really matter that much because they're just so overwhelming as like in like what they're good at. And I have an example of this, because again, this is where it usually manifests. And you might disagree, I said this all the time when Nier was top 1. Nier is this character. Pre-patch Nier had weaknesses, especially post-Versucha patch, right? Pre-patch Nier had weaknesses. Pre-patch Nier had 15,000 health. Pre-patch Nier had like one of the worst Meterless reversals in the entire game. So she had one, she had a Meterless reversal, but she had like, one of the worst Meterless reversals in the entire game, right? She had like good Abari buttons for sure, right? She didn't have bad defense. But like Nier was like, and Nier did have like certain matchups that kind of like hard countered her, right? Because of the way that her defense was set up, right? Funny enough, again, I think even like Vasaraga and Ladiva, characters like this, like unironically, like matched up pretty well into Nier when she was undisputed top 1. The thing is, yeah, those weaknesses exist, right? 15k HP is not minor. Having a bad reversal is not minor, right? But does it fucking matter when she does like 10,000 damage on every fucking hit and it loops into itself and it's 50-50s and you can't defend yourself against her at all and she's plus 1,000,000 on every hit and she has all the best use skills in the game and blah, 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 blah? No, it doesn't matter anymore. And when you make a character that is one of these more jagged characters, top tier, this is usually the way it comes about. We buff them so fucking hard, we buff the thing that's unique about them so hard that it just doesn't matter anymore that they have weaknesses, right? So, this might be, if you've been sort of like drawing a web in your head of like acceptable JoJo stat wheels, you might have come to a bit of an unfortunate conclusion, right? And it is that, for the most part, if this is all with the presumption, if a character needs to be, if we need to have top 1 characters, there really is like one acceptable stat spread, and it's Shoto. And by the way, that doesn't mean other characters can't be good, and I think more what game devs should be trying to do is like squishing the tiers, which is what Granblue has done a great job of with 1.5 so far, things like this, where it's just like, even if other characters aren't quite as good, still like let them be competitive, let them be able to play, stuff like that, even if they're not like in discussion for best character in the game, right? But if perfectly balancing a fighting game is having everyone play the same game. So, if we're going to have somebody be good, then we should have them be Shotos. And here's another reason, by the way, why Shotos like these, I actually think are a doubly so a good idea to be intentionally strong. So far, you've established that Shoto characters like Belial, all they do really is they are very balanced, they have no weakness, but they don't necessarily have like any overwhelming strength in the same way that like, a Nier or a Ladiva or a Vasaraga or a Grim Nier or something might have, right? with that in mind, if we move on to the other half of that, we talked about how those same characters, those Niers and your Vladivas and all that, can be unhealthy top tiers. Now, the double synergistic corporate buzzword effect here is that strong Shotos tend to be kind of the natural predator for those sorts of archetypes. If we go at it, we went at it from like a sort of mathematical standpoint earlier, like we have this risk-reward calculation, and with Shotos, they're usually good because the risk-reward is like balanced across the board, so they end up with like a higher number on average. And with like the non-balanced characters, the only way to make them really good is to make one part of that equation so the number is so fucking big that it spits out that the equation is like overwritten. You know, it just dominates. It's like the limit as x hits infinity is just the one answer of that one equation. If you don't like the math, ignore it. It's fine. From a different standpoint, from like a biological, natural ecosystem standpoint, Shotos. So a good example of this is this is a different tier list here, but don't worry about it too much. So Vayne is a character that beats the shit out of Vasaraga, right? Vayne and Vasaraga are two characters that have a very polarizing matchup, right? These are two hyper specialized characters, right? Vayne and Vasaraga, and it just so happens that Vayne's hyper specialty kind of counters Vasaraga's hyper specialty, right? So this ends up being a pretty bad matchup for Vas. I think it's like you have this sometimes, these like highly specialized characters, where if like one specialty perfectly counters another one, you end up with like some really rough matchups. However, you might notice that like both of these guys kind of get their shit rocked by Belial, for example, right? Both of these characters could very easily be unhealthy top tiers. But even if they were, like Vas is quite good right now. Even still, though, there's a lot of like natural characters that exist in the meta, a lot of strong, well-rounded characters that are just going to kind of beat both of these guys by virtue of, if I'm pretty good at everything and you are really good at one thing, but you're weak somewhere else, I can find your weakness, I can maneuver and play around that in the game if I'm playing properly, right? So another reason that it's a good idea to have the well-rounded characters be strong is because they sort of naturally keep these sorts of characters down. You know, like ask a Vasaraga what one of their worst matchups is. At some point, they'll name Belial. Same thing with Vayne. Same thing with Fairy, right? Most Fairies will say, fuck, I hate fighting Belial. Most Ladivos will say the same thing, right? Like, all of these, like, super jagged, super unbalanced, like, specialized characters, most of them don't like to fight Belial, right? Which is a good thing, because it means that he sort of pushes them down a little bit. Even if the devs make a mistake and maybe overbuff one of them, he kind of keeps them where they should be, where they're not just, like, running the fucking game, right? And in the same vein, you'll notice that a character like Belial is not exactly running the game. Yeah, he won Evo. Yeah, he usually does pretty well in tournaments. He's got lots of strong players representing him and stuff like that. But it's not like we have we never have a top 8 that's 9 Belials out of 8, right? Like with Nier, it happened once where there was one top 8 with Nier that was like 6 top Niers, something like that in the top 8, something like that, right? But you're never gonna see like an all Belial top 8 because like he's good, but there are other characters that can compete with him, right? CEO, I think, yeah, something like that, So Belial is an example of this. It's kind of like go over some. I think especially now post nerf to EX Fireball, I think Siegfried is an example of this. I think Siegfried is honestly, I'm totally fine with him as he is. He maybe does like a little too much damage. He's more maybe like a little bit too good, but he is much more clearly like he has like more well-defined weaknesses than Belial for sure. He is slow, right? He's maybe like a little too tanky. I don't know, but like. Again, I really don't mind Siegfried. Like, I really don't feel like Siegfried ever like just pisses anyone off, unless you just are mad that you're losing, I guess, which he will beat you, right? Like I think there's I think those two to me are like the ones that kind of like stand out very much. I think Catalina could be certainly. I think they went a little too ham on like Catalina 5U, right? I think they went a little too ham on Cat 5U. I think again, Cat is one of these characters that could be. Like, I think not right now necessarily. And so I think Midnight asked about your opinion on strength for snowball type characters like Lucy. Lucilius, I think, this is a more interesting archetype because there's a lot of setup type characters, right? I think these sorts of characters are a little bit precarious often just because you either need to make it's hard to strike the balance with these guys where either their setup is like too easy that it's essentially a joke, right? Or like the reward on their setup is not worthwhile enough for it to be meaningful, or it's too worthwhile, it doesn't matter how hard it is to get to, right? I think these characters are like, I mean, Lucy is basically, he's like an almost like Shoto style all-rounder character, just like, you know, he's been shifted over a little bit for that blade level mechanic. I think, you know, for example, if Iscariot did not give Lucy a blade level, I think he's probably still very strong. I think that's probably still fine, right? Yeah, like Lil Wayne's a great example of another like bad character be top tier, right? Yeah, like I'm okay with like, you know, a strong Lucy. He's mostly he just like does a lot of stuff well. They just like maybe went a little too hard on blade level 5. I'm like this, and again, I like these kinds of characters so you can make it so that like they're like pseudo Shotos, not really, but at least they have like a little bit more uniqueness to them, right? Because you don't just want every character who gets represented to be like, you know, to be Belial, your Belials and your Catalinas of the world, right? So like I think having like slight tweaks on that formula be like really good is still fine, and then again having like the more jagged characters be strong, like be, you know, A+ tier stuff like that is totally fine. Like if maybe not Ladiva, right? But like, so Vasaraga, for example, right now, I think is in a good. I think Ladiva is one of the least interactive characters in the whole game, by the way. But like, Vasaraga, I think right now is probably in roughly that tier. I think that's somewhat okay. I think Voss being an actual top tier will be too toxic. But Voss being like a genuinely strong character that like could win a tournament on any given Sunday is fine because he has natural predators, right? He as long as we keep the well-rounded characters strong, he will have his natural ecosystem predators that will kill him. So it's okay. As long as Voss does, as long as we don't crank the power level up too hard, he can still be, you know, viable, strong, definitely can win like semi-consistently even maybe, so it can have variety. Because the one thing, the games get really boring when there's like one kind of character. If it's like always, if it's Belial and Catalina and Belial and Catalina and Belial and Catalina, it's boring. But characters don't have to be top tier to be played in brackets, right? You'll still see a lot of character diversity. I just think that the best characters in the game probably should be those well-rounded characters. I guess, yeah, as a summary, right? As a sort of a summary of what I've been talking about. I know we kind of jumped around a lot. I hope I got across. I think I got across everything I wanted to say. But as a summary for what we've been talking about, I think the best characters in the game should be those more all-rounded, balanced characters. Because one, they usually are strong because they are just consistent and not because they are uninteractable, right? Which is a valid, the most valid or the most healthy way to be powerful in fighting games, in my opinion. And they also hold down the other more jagged, more uninteractable characters, who probably, even if, so what that allows us to do is buff these characters, right? Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, Belial being good means we can buff Vasaraga, we can buff Ladiva, we can buff Nier, we can buff Fairy, right? Because, at the end of the day, there's always gonna be the fucking shark swimming in the water, right? That might send you to hell. I think the healthiest top tiers are the hard ones. I kind of disagree, because I think if we can have like a bit of a we can have like a bit of a discussion on because someone did mention we talked about like difficulty in terms of how that affects like how healthy you are, right? And I think I don't really like. Yeah, I think it's only a problem if it's like too far on one side or the other, right? If the character is too simple and just like what they're doing is like, because usually, by the way, it's kind of the different way of saying the same thing. If a character is so simple that like anyone can just pick them up and like instantly do crazy shit with them, it's probably because the shit they're doing is uninteractive, right? It's probably because there is no, because as soon as the idea that your opponent has counterplay to an option comes into place, then there is going to inherently be some complexity there, and like some skill required from you there, right? So a character that is too brain dead easy and still powerful, it's usually because there is not really anything that you can do to stop what they're doing, right? So it's a different way of saying the same thing. As far as having like really hard characters and calling that healthy, I think the one problem with that is it opens up a big rift between the casual community's opinion on a character and the professional community's opinion on the character, right? And I think that makes those characters tend to be hard to balance, right? Just because I don't think that just because a character is super hard, they deserve to be good, right? But I think it comes to a point where you're like, well, I mean, these characters are literally not played by 99% of the 99% of the player base, right? But like they're winning every bracket or something, right? So I think it's. I don't really think that being technically difficult makes you a healthy top tier inherently, right? Yeah, I don't think I quite agree with that personally. Easy top tiers also makes some more people play them, and you run them all the time. And sure, but again, I think when you say what you're saying when you say easy top tier, right? I think is so Beatrix, right? Release Beatrix. The reason like that she was like so easy to play is because she just had like simple, strong nonsense that you could not do a fucking damn thing about, right? So it's the same idea, right? It's the same exact, and like she has like a command grab. So like suddenly all of like even like your general like strike throw mind game and RPS, like that can be gone too, right? So the reason Beatrix is easy is because she's uninteractable, right? Like that's the, in my opinion, I think it's two exact ways of saying the same thing. So in that sense, I agree with you. I think characters that are too easy to win with probably are wrong, right? She's not still super easy to play. Yeah, I mean, she's still very good, and like she's still maybe a little too good, right, for how like simple her whole game plan is. But at least like things like 2-2M being minus on block now, things like her damage going down, things like this. Like she has to at least like it does make it so she's a little bit less just fucking go, right? Like 2-2M being plus on block was a funny thing, man. So yeah. So that was a bit of a detour there, but I think character difficulty is really not. It doesn't factor in too much, in my opinion. Like the technical execution of it. Maybe that's maybe I'm just like I'm not an old head or something like that. I think again, having counterplay the same way that being too easy means you don't have no counterplay. If there is counterplay to your options, that gives you like an inherent amount of strategic depth and skill required, and I think that's okay by me, right? So you have to consider real top tiers at high top level where execution difficulty is not going to be that much of an issue. Yeah, exactly. So I don't really, again, I think all that does is like, it just doesn't really matter too much for the pro players, and just makes the casuals not play the character or like have a different opinion. So then like you might like nerf that character and then it's be like, or like completely unplayed at like almost every level of play because they're already not played and you made them worse. But it's because they're really good in the top tiers, right? If you could pick any 3 characters to be top tier, who would you pick? Bro, I'm not gonna lie to you, like 2 of them are already there, I think. Again, like Belial and Siegfried, I think are totally fine. I don't even I kind of like Belial, Siegfried, Lucilius personally. Maybe that's fucking insane of me, but again, it's like they are sort of 3 different flavors of the same thing, right? Like Belial, Belial's like your pure like white bread, just guy who does everything well, right? Siegfried is like a little bit more rounded towards this like damage and like big pokes, and like he's a little bit less well rounded, and Lucilius is like a bit of a unique spin on it with like a power up character, right? I'm kind of okay with those 3 as it is, right? I mean, like we can like take a look at the roster, but like, by and large, the further out I get from patch 1.5, the more I go, well, fuck. Everything I tried to criticize them on, I'm kind of like, well, I kind of get what they're going at, right? I can see what they mean. Again, it's not that they did a perfect job, but I'm like, I understand their like point of view a lot, right? Yeah. So yes, well-rounded characters. They are relatively interactable most of the time. They keep the other more jagged, more toxic characters at bay, and the more toxic characters, if they were top tier, it's because they just like are essentially Shotos that are just not balanced, right? You either make them so strong that their weaknesses don't matter, or you remove their weaknesses. Neither of those are healthy designs for a guy who can do this and just completely shut off. When Voss does this, 99% of your controller is gone, right? You have literally your only 2 options become jump or down back, right? Gabba said hi. Hello, Gabba. Hello, Raiders. Hi. You guys missed a controversial last video. We're just about wrapping it up right now. Yes, hello, Gabba. Hi. My goats. Everyone's saying Gabba said hi. How's it going, fellas? How's it going? Gabba, yeah, hello, Gabba. Hi. Well, welcome, Raiders. Thank you for the raid, Hubert. Is this? This was in Clover Clash. Was this a draft? I mean, I was always here. So true. Yeah, man. That is Future. Thank you for the follow. Thank you, Winter. Thank you. Oh God, what was your take? Okay, I guess real quick. Sorry for the VOD watchers. I'm just gonna repeat this very quickly, okay? And you guys can yell at me all you want. We're gonna move on to something else after this because I repeated myself too much, and these poor VOD watchers getting their shit rocked in. Yo, Jayhan, thank you for the follow. So here's the thing, right? This is inane. The general take was, I believe that well-rounded, like Shoto-style characters, if someone has to be top tier, I would rather them be top tier, because usually the way they achieve their strength is through just being super balanced and super capable at all stages of the game, instead of like completely removing interaction at one point of the game, like a motherfucker like this might, right? Or like Ladiva or something like that. And they also act as sort of like natural environmental predators to those more jagged characters, right? This is a classic take of like, trust me, you might hate Belial. I promise you would hate top tier Ladiva more. You would hate top tier Fairy more. You would hate top tier Vasaraga more, right? Listen, Belial needs nerfing. I understand a little bit, but I actually think Belial, the further I go on, the more I'm like, Belial being good is probably a good thing for the game, right? This can maybe not be plus on block. Otherwise, keep his ass as he is. Like it's totally fine. I think it's totally. No, you're right. Okay, I'm glad. I can understand that I don't want every top tier to be a Shoto. Yes, okay. Lazy. So here's the other thing, right? The reason I think it's good to have the Shotos be really good is because that lets us do things like, we can buff Vasaraga now. We can buff Ladiva. We can buff Fairy. We can buff Matera. We can buff Vayne. because no matter like how good they are, right? They'll always have that fucking shark swimming in the water behind them that'll like it'll keep them from ever running the game too much. You can all, because again, all of those characters, Ladiva, Vayne, Fairy, they all hate fighting Belial. You'll notice, right? Like he just kind of he keeps the ecosystem in check. So then, if we can have Voss be strong, we can have Ladiva be strong, we can have Fairy be strong, right? Then you'll see them played in brackets still. You're not gonna get an all Belial top 8. You never will. And then, as far as your top tier, no one plays on Belial though, and that's kind of fine, I think, because again, Belial is never going to be all 7 characters of a top 8 because he simply is just not going to carry you in some aspect of the game in the same way a character like Voss, like Ladiva, like Fairy might, right? I'm not saying overall, I'm saying in one part of the video game, right? He's going to, these characters just require you to think less than some of the more all-rounded characters. Yeah, that's about the take, I think. That's about the take. We'll call it there. Again, I've repeated myself too much. VOD watchers, hello, hi. If you like the video, well, we're going to keep going on stream, but for the VOD watchers, I'm going to say bye to them real quick. So hello, hi. If you like the video, any kind of like, subscribes, comments, bells, all be greatly appreciated, all that. I also stream every day from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern, except for Fridays, so come by, hang out. Great time on YouTube and Twitch. I also have Discord if you want to get in there, you know, great place to make some friends, get some matches. But if you do join, be nice, or I'll shoot you in the head in Minecraft. Most importantly, hope you had a great time hanging out today. I know I sure did. Fun video. I hope I got my point across properly. Again, my idea is not, yes, I repeated myself enough. I think it makes sense. I believe this quite strongly, and the longer I play fighting games, the more I believe this. Having a lot of fun with Grand Blue, going to be a lot more coming your way, and until then, I will see you in the next one. Peace.